When you've got that and you have that ease of carryability, but then also the capacity to do some pretty hard work, man, that just, I mean, you know, pitter-patter, a little bit of pitter-patter, okay? The heart just flutters. I really like that about this knife. On the table for review today are the Benchmade Mini Presidio and Presidio Ultra, and we're going to talk about how these knives perform as everyday carry knives, how they fit in as everyday carry knives, do they fit in as everyday carry knives, where do they rank for other Benchmade knives in sort of favorability, in my opinion, as well as against lots of other EDC knives in their categories. We'll cover all that and more throughout the course of this review, so stick around. First, let's talk about the performance of this one right here, the Mini Presidio. Man, this knife is really won my heart very, very quickly. And if we talk about just how it performs in cutting and in carry, boy, I'm very, very impressed. I'll be honest with you, I have not done much carry at all with the Presidio Ultra. This is actually the Presidio Ultra Auto. So the way these Benchmade autos work is very simple and pretty cool. You pull back on that axis lock and out it flies. So you've got, you know, the same lockup, it's just a different mechanism inside this one, making it an auto version of the knife. So I do kind of wish that I had the Presidio Auto instead of the Presidio Ultra Auto, and I won't go into the story of how I acquired this one. However, I do like getting some experience with that automatic mechanism from Benchmade. It's quite cool. Now, again, we'll set this one aside for a little bit and bring it back to the table to talk about and contrast and compare the two knives. I definitely prefer the Mini over the full-size Presidio, and we'll talk a little bit about why as we get into this review. For those of you who watch a lot of my knife reviews, you pretty much already know I just generally prefer EDC size knives over those EDC plus size knives, and that's basically what it boils down to. But anyway, let's get into why and how I became so enamored with this knife. But first, let's talk and show some of that cutting footage. So I try to put my EDC knives through a good amount of testing before I bring them in for review and capture some of that on footage to show you kind of how they perform. Starting with a little bit of paper cut tests. Obviously, almost any knife is going to cut through paper, right? But how fine of an edge will that knife take, and how well will it just slice through the paper? Well, this one did quite well. It's it went through that very quickly, meaning that this 154 cm steel that Benchmade gives us does take quite a fine edge, and that is very good to know. And it maintains it for quite a long time. Also, it's quite workable. You can, when it does dull, you can bring it back fairly quickly to a hair-popping edge, and I'm not sure why 154 cm has that capability, but it's easily one of my 3 favorite steels because of that fact. Alright, so slicing through paper, easy. Slicing through cardboard, even easier. And of all the knives I tested that day in some cardboard slicing tests, this one easily had the best lubricity. It just flew through that cardboard with no hang-ups, no apparent friction, even as it went through slice after slice, heating up the blade a little bit. No slowing down, no friction, no sense of glue getting on the knife and slowing it down. None of that. It just zipped through it lightning fast, and you can see that in the footage. I was super, super impressed with the Presidio just for that fact. And, not that cardboard is a hard medium to cut through, but to see it fly through it that easily and with that lubricity was really impressive. Moved on, of course, to a little bit of wood to carve away at, get a sense for the ergonomics, how that impacted the web of your hand as you're bearing down on it. And I gotta say, overall, the knife performed just fine, but how did it perform in hand, and how did I enjoy it from an ergonomic standpoint? And I gotta say, it did quite well. I was quite impressed with it. It was quite comfortable in hand, even for the size. It is a smaller knife, but I'd say that fills my hand well enough and has enough contour to it that it is actually quite comfortable to dig into some harder materials and kind of carve away. So I would say that if you're looking at a Presidio or a Mini Presidio, I would say look at the Mini a little bit harder, because it is lighter weight, it's easier to carry in pocket, and I feel like it does a lot of hard work given how small it is. So, if that didn't explain why I've become so enamored with it so quickly, I don't know really what else will. When you have a small knife that carries very well in pocket, it's got a good pocket clip that carries pretty nice and deep. That's adequate for me. You can get a lanyard through there, obviously. When you've got that and you have that ease of carryability, but then also the capacity to do some pretty hard work, man, that just, I mean, you know, pitter-patter, a little bit of pitter-patter, okay? The heart just flutters. I really like that about this knife. We can compare it to a few other Benchmades that are also great performers, perhaps, though, not as robust feeling in hand. Okay, so there is obviously the Mini Presidio. We'll compare it to the mini-griptilian, which is a fantastic EDC knife and one I highly recommend. However, I would say definitely that the Mini Presidio has got a better handle on it for some harder and longer work. So yeah, you look at those side by side, you'll see the Presidio is a bit thicker, a bit longer for sure, and just a little more palm filling, a little more hand filling. And look at the angle of that. You can see how that kind of curves down. The blade just digs into the material as you're leaning in, bearing into it. It wants to get further and further into it. The Griptilian doesn't quite do that. The mini-griptilian doesn't quite do that. So that's quite a cool feature that we have with the Presidio, and definitely something that sets it apart design-wise and gives some really great value. And we can also talk about, here's the Benchmade, what is this one called again? It's getting late, guys, excuse me. The 943, of course. Benchmade 943 Osborne. Really cool knife. Still really love it. I would not say that it has the same ergonomic appeal to it, though. It's got a more carryable handle, slimmer, lighter overall. For EDC, light EDC, even some hard, heavy EDC, it's going to do just fine. It's going to probably perform very, very well. However, I think that Presidio performs better. In hand, it just feels great. Really, really like it. I've got other Benchmades I could show you, but they're not handy, unfortunately. We could show you a handful of other EDC knives, though. Perhaps like the Spyderco Persistence. Also a good EDC knife, very close in size and weight. And how about the Icoma Fossil from CRKT? Just an outstanding knife as far as aesthetics are concerned. Ergonomics are not quite as good as the Presidio. I would say the Presidio beats all these for ergonomics. This one is not too bad, though. That one's not too bad. Persistence is not too bad, but definitely I would say this one beats it. So that's I think I've kind of summed it up there. Why this knife right here, this Mini Presidio, is hitting my favorites list so quickly. It just it gives you incredible ergonomics and fantastic utility and great ease of carry. So that's why this is kind of quickly entered into one of my favorite knives, kind of a favorite knife list. Now, the price on this may be a little bit prohibitive to some of you. If you're into Benchmades, not so much. But it is up there. It's around 160, 162, 165, something like that. That's kind of up there with the 943, 940. Very close in range. And again, like I said, if you're into Benchmades, you're probably used to spending around that. But you get basically the same steel and very close to the same blade with the mini-griptilian for like 60 bucks less, maybe even more. You know, maybe 70 bucks less. So is it worth the price to you? Yeah, it's going to have to be, you know, up for you to decide and make that call. Personally, I do not regret having purchased this one. I really like it. And as I said before, it's one of my favorites. Really enjoying it. You can tell that I've put it through some use, but more than that, you can tell that I have intentionally scuffed it up to give it just some great looks. And I mentioned this in the Boba Fett Your Knife video. That really came down to aesthetics and kind of giving it a little more pleasing look for me. And it started with dropping the knife on some concrete. I don't remember which corner it was, but I dinged up a corner, scraped it all to bits, and thought, well, now that I've ding this knife up. It used to be fairly pristine, kind of like the 943 is here. Once I got a little ding on it, I was like, well, you know, it would probably look really cool if I just kind of spread that out across the entire knife. And I feel like aesthetically, it's superb now. I just love the way it looks. Kind of Boba Fetted, kind of just distressed in a way that's, again, strictly for good looks. Not intended to fake anybody out and make him think that this knife has been through hell and back. But, you know, for me, I reach for that one a little more frequently now, and that is enough of a reason for me to get this thing in pocket and enjoy it a little more. Also, I would say that there is some functionality to rounding off these corners at least, and we can compare that to the Benchmade Presidio Ultra, which already has some sort of you know, some steeped corners there. They've kind of carved that down, molded that down. It's not quite rounded, but it's better than this one used to be. Okay, you can look at different parts of this knife and see how there's kind of a sharp corner here, and you know, if you look at how that is right there, it just kind of comes as a slight decline to it. But anyway, relatively sharp and kind of fat down there. That's kind of how these corners used to be. They literally came to a point that would almost scratch you in coming here and then dipping down. It was very much a right angle. I do not understand why that had that edge, that corner to it. I don't know. It felt like a big oversight from me, from my perspective, from Benchmade. I don't know why they did that and why they didn't sort of give that a little more of a, you know, semi-rounded corner to it. Anyway, I did the job instead, rounded that off. I love the knife even more than I did before now. And if you get this knife and you're happy to kind of customize it to suit it a little better to yourself, I definitely recommend doing that to it. Then again, you may not want to do that to a $162 knife. So, you know, bear that in mind. Overall, man, I just got to say that the Mini Presidio from Benchmade, fantastic knife. Benchmade's one of Benchmade's best from my perspective. And I haven't held and used every Benchmade, far from it. But from the ones that I have, that I currently own, the other ones that I've held in my hand, I don't see a lot of them that are better than the Mini Presidio so far. Talk a little bit about the large Presidio Ultra. This is 440C, not 154cm like that one. Also, the handle is a type of a Zytel, a polymer material, not the aluminum that this one's made of. So it feels a little bit lighter in hand, and it is because it's not metallic. It's still got those same liners, but given that it's a polymer material for the handle, it does feel a bit lighter in hand. And that would go for both the standard Presidio Ultra as well as the Mini Presidio Ultra. It's kind of still boggling my mind and baffling me why this one is called the Ultra and that one's just called the Presidio or Mini Presidio. I'm not quite sure why that is, especially when this is 440C and that's 154cm. It seems like this is the Ultra, the better one, and this one is sort of more of a standard issue one. I don't really understand the nomenclature there. However, that's what it is. Again, so 440C actually this is a hollow ground blade to it, whereas this one is kind of a saber flat ground on there, which I also definitely prefer over the Presidio Ultra. Again, cool knives, both of them. This one's a bit fatter and larger and just generally bigger and a little too EDC plus for most uses that I have, but generally speaking, cool knife. Even more cool knife. One last thing I'll point out, because I think it's interesting for those of you who have a lot of Benchmade knives or look at a lot of Benchmade knives, I want you to examine this here, right here. If you see that the axis lock, they both have axis locks on them, but this one is much deeper, has much more travel to it. Does that mean it has a better lockup? I'm not sure. I will tell you though that as you actuate it, it's much more positive and obvious that you're pulling back on it. And I think that's can't be a bad thing right there, because it's a lot easier and simpler and just more sure of a lockup, more sure of a release, and I'll take that larger channel for the axis lock over the smaller channel any day. Very cool. All right, guys, that is my review of the Benchmade Mini Presidio and Presidio Ultra. I hope this review has been helpful and interesting to you. I am the Late Boy Scout. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Another good knife. Here we go. How about the Spyderco Centofonte 3? Oh, that's a real nice gentleman's folder. Either one of these is an excellent gentleman's folder. This one's slightly more tactical looking, obviously, because it's all black, but it sure is gorgeous.